Okay, as I said at the end of the last video, I'm going to have a look at the N75 maps for the PD130, this one, and the PD150, just to see if any changes were made between the two. So I'm going to go to the 130 first, so there we have that there, and then I go and find the 150, and there we are there. And just have a look to see if they've made any changes here between the two. Now, as before, the simplest thing to do to compare the axes is just pull out the data. Now, of course, that is the Passat data, so I don't want to pull the data out of the Passat. I want to pull the data from this one, which is the 150. So I'm going to just run across to there, copy that, just delete the highlight, and then I'm going to come back up to here and click paste and delete, and nothing's happened. There's no color changes, so it looks like they're the same. No great surprise to that really. And then I'm going to go over to this one here. I'm going to say copy, and I'm going to press delete, and I'm going to go to there, and I'm going to click paste and delete the highlight, and no changes there. So it looks as if the axes are the same on both maps, so that's always handy. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to transfer the data from the 150 map onto the 130 map to see if there's any difference there. Now at first glance it looks like there is anyway, so I'm going to copy that, delete that to clear it, and I'm going to come up here and click paste, delete the highlight. Right, now it looks as though we've got a significant difference. Now how significant the difference is not clear. I suspect this bit here is not significant. I suspect that that does not matter whether that reads 7500 or 80000. I don't think the difference in there is meaningful at all, so I think basically all of these should read as 80%. It would make no difference. The reason for that being that when the engine is first started, or it's down on relatively low revs per minute, you usually find that the turbo actuator sits at about 80%. Sometimes there are a few files that go higher than 80%, but that's the sort of maximum value you'd expect to see. So if they'd started at 90, usually they all sit at 90 and that sort of thing. So I would say that these values here are not of any real importance. The fact that they're not quite the same and they're slightly lower as before, I don't think is of any real significance. Right, now if we look over here, these few in the corner here have stayed the same as the original values. So in other words, these values are what this map originally had, and you can see that there. Now I guess again that's more to do with the fact that you would get a degree of protection by not mucking around too much in the very highest, because that's the highest rev per minute and the highest IQ. So I'm not really surprised that right in that corner they're the same. Again, these odd little changes over here, I doubt that they're very relevant, but this big mass of change in the middle, obviously this is presumably quite relevant. I should imagine that this is the data change that's giving us our little bit of extra boost. In other words, what we've got here is the closing of the turbo, if you like, as we go diagonally across here. As performance of the car increases, as we put in more fuel and we get more revs per minute, we are closing the vanes or opening the vanes depending on how you see the turbocharger working. But basically what we're doing is we're calling for more boost but less of an increase in boost. So in other words, the more boost we want more, but it will rise of its own accord. We are demanding less of an increase constantly. If we tried to demand an ever increasing increase in boost, we would shoot way above the boost limit and drop straight into limp mode. So that's why these figures are dropping. It often seems odd when we first look at them to think that, well, boost is rising but these figures are dropping, but they have to be dropping because otherwise we will dramatically overboost. Now the pattern of these is obviously designed so that we don't overboost at different points in the revs or different points in the IQ range. So this pattern is not to be played with lightly, because if you start to fiddle with it, you could very quickly find yourself dropping into limp mode as a result of a change that you've made. So by changing this file to match this one, we should be okay. So if we do that, we should be okay, because the designers have already taken that into account, because they made that change on a 150. So with a little bit of luck, the same changes will be perfectly okay on a 130. Right, now, as before, I'm going to save that. I don't want a new version, so that's all still in my modified file, which is now some PD150 changes. So this has now got some of the changes from PD150, so I've saved that. Right, I'll stop there